Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Ian Carter, Chairman of the States of Alderney Policy and Finance Committee, and effectively Alderney's Chief Minister. We're going to take a look at the proposed reform of the governance of Alderney and then go on to discuss other current matters. Ian, good to see you. Thanks for your time.
Nice to see you, Tony, on a very sort of bright and
Yes,
very sunny afternoon.
we're doing it on Monday, folks, so there we are. First of all, I think we'd better make it clear that the process is still in consultation. So,
yes, very much so. Yeah.
So to that end, what you're going to say today could possibly change slightly. Who knows? But let's kick off by accepting the fact that reform's been awaited a long time. We've had the McDonald report and others. And of course, Lord Keane's 3 requirements. Now, no doubt you check those out. Do you think we're in compliance with Lord Keane's ideas?
I think my main concern is obviously ensuring that we have sufficient numbers of people standing for election. I think that really is the key thing, because as Lord Keane sort of pointed out very much in the SARC context, that the lack of contested elections leads to what in effect is a democratic deficit, and people then not actually being represented in the way that one wants. I mean, the idea that from his recommendations that you've got sufficient capacity in government, I think we'll always have to look at how the civil service supports us, and whether or not there's always that debate: have we got too many civil servants or not enough? Have we got the right sort of skill mix? And I think that always has to be reviewed, because life changes and the demands change. And obviously, in terms of a far more international world that we live in, and having to perhaps comply with more international standards and not being able to just let things pass us by, we do have to actually look at those things. Are decisions made in a transparent way? One hopes that they are, but there's always a perception. It would appear that people think they're not. I mean, I've again obviously only been on the States now for what 18 months, and there seems to be my impression sometimes is that people think you make decisions without actually just on sort of a gut feel. Well, I certainly don't. I don't see my fellow members doing that. We do listen to experts on island, off island. We have briefings, and then you come to a judgment. So from that perspective of making decisions, I feel that we're given that information. We ask, I think, good questions. There'll always be people who will say, well, you're not specialized enough, you haven't got sufficient knowledge. No, we wouldn't in every area, and that's why you ask specialists to give you that knowledge. Now, it is a case of getting the right people in,
and of course acting on it,
and acting upon it, and making decisions that actually happen, not just kicking things further down the line.
Okay. Can we sort of look? You recently issued a leaflet inviting public input. The number of people that turned up at that workshop the other day was 30, apparently, according to the Alderney Journal. That's not very good, is it?
It's not, but is well. You can take that as you want. Is 30 people turning up a good thing because the rest of the population are very happy with what's in place? Are the 30 people who turn up, have they got suggestions? Are they there to inform themselves? Are they there to help us? And so any form of consultation exercise, and just saying a bold statement, well, only 30 people turned up, they could be the right 30 people.
Yeah,
in
sure.
terms of really putting forward some very testing questions that make you think far more carefully about the proposals. And I say and what one shouldn't do, of course, is assume that because only 30 people turn up, that the rest of the population is content with what has been proposed.
Well, hopefully today, Ian, we'll be able to add on to that 30 by this interview you're giving me. So let's hope that that's the case. Just to look at the basic mechanics, 2025, so the elections would be in 2024. We get to a situation where 10 becomes 8, and there's going to be a 4-year term from that point on. So the intake for 22-23 is going to be for 2 years.
It's going to be for a potentially shorter period.
Yeah.
One has to be pragmatic about these things. Though the aim is for 2025, one knows that things do not always go to plan. So one has to be pragmatic to say you may not have a full 4-year term. Yeah.
So looking at that from that point of view, do you think you can get it all agreed for the run up to 2025?
I think it's going to be tight. It's ambitious. The law officers we've spoken to in Guernsey, they feel they have the capacity in terms of drafting time in order for this to happen. Where we don't have control is any revisions that might be required by the Privy Council, Ministry of Justice. And so it would be quite wrong for me to sort of say, oh, yes, it'll definitely be in place, because we don't have control over several stages of the process.
You've got a debate coming up in September. Now, you've only got 9 members following Rhys Jenkins' resignation. Is that a quorum? Is that sufficient to put it through?
Well, I think we're at the stage where I think the quorum for a states meeting is 5 members plus the president.
Yeah.
But to change the government of ordinary law, you'll need 9 members plus the president, and at least 7 have to vote in favour of it.
Okay.
So in theory, that is possible to do so. But I think the key thing is if you move things forward at pace, you also have to be really, really clear that what you've got in place is precisely what you need. And so I think I will be very interested to see at the end of this consultation period what we actually have in terms of that feedback, and then reviewing what has been said, and say the feedback from both Guernsey, Ministry of Justice, other consultation partners that we have, and that may influence how we take that forward.
Yeah. Okay. Should the electorate have a referendum to confirm that they're happy with the changes?
I don't think I really want to be drawn on that, because there's no constitutional law or in our current law about referendums, and you have to take further advice over that. So it's something I don't want to say one thing on either positive nor negative about.
So you are literally on the fence on that one.
I am, because one views one's seen the effects of referendums in other jurisdictions. Also, that the key point in any referendum is making sure that the question is correct.
Yeah, sure.
Something of this complexity, I'm not convinced could be necessarily easily asked of the electorate in an easily understandable question.
Do you agree, yes or no?
Well, there's so many different aspects of it. There's different aspects, Tony, that as I've found already, people are saying, "Oh, I like this bit," a bit like sort of a la carte and and the 3-course meal. But I don't like this bit, so I think that makes it too simplistic.
Okay, obviously the states of Guernsey are on board as far as the general concept's concerned.
Well, I think they're a consultation partner. We've not had formal reply from the states of Guernsey as to their thoughts on it, so I couldn't, because as I say, we're still in that consultation period. We certainly had no red flag thrown back at us initially. Okay.
Any idea how much it's going to cost?
Well, I think I saw you had one of your other interviews that you did with Rod McDowell, and he sort of thought with the McDonald report there's sort of 250,000. I mean, I think we're in a very different environment at the moment in terms of cooperation with Guernsey in terms of civil service support. And I'd very happily talk through with Robert how he got to that figure. But I think I wouldn't really want to hazard a guess now because of that different political climate that we have, and I feel that just plucking a figure out of the air. We have nothing to pay in terms of law officer time. That's part of the deal as to how the law officers work. So that drafting process, the enactment of it, and the outcomes will have, I'm sure, a cost. But so I don't want to commit myself on that simply because I think we have a better understanding of the relationship with Guernsey, and that actually might find that our costs are actually reduced.
Okay. In terms of the election of the Guernsey representatives, I know already there's a bit of disquiet with the public as to the loss of the public's right to nominate and vote for the people that are ultimately going to stand as Guernsey representatives. The brochure, the leaflet, seemed to be pretty adamant that it was going to work on the basis of states members actually carrying out the election process. Are you prepared to change your view on that, do you think?
I say any consultation, you get the feedback. I mean, personally, I'm quite ambivalent about that. I think what I've gathered through the research about the plebiscite was that it was introduced as an experiment. It wasn't then reviewed as to its effectiveness. I certainly think it should. We need to look at how it worked. What you don't want, I don't think, is having people standing for Guernsey representation who are not states members. I think that would be certainly, from my perspective, a red line, because I don't think they'd have the understanding of what the states want if you're not a states member. But as I say, I'm not absolutely sort of wedded to it, and would be very happy, would be persuaded otherwise.
Yeah.
But I think what would need to be done, though, is rather than having this plebiscite as this sort of add-on, that whatever we do is implemented in that new States of Ordinary governmental law. So it's not just an added part of what we currently do.
Coming on to this question of the portfolios, each member is going to be awarded a portfolio to effectively run the island. Is it your view that those portfolios will be held for the 4-year period?
I think at least 2 years. I think it takes you at least 2 years to get your feet under the table, to understand what you're doing. I think my preference, would be for 4 years, but I can understand that there might be good sense if somebody feels that they've run the course of what they want to do in 2 years, and others are able to swap around, if I can put it that way. That's not belittling the importance of each portfolio. That there could be changes after 2 years. But I would have thought to actually make any impact, and also to be accountable, if you're just doing things for a year, I don't think you actually see anything through.
Okay, because obviously some of those portfolios are very high profile, and others are pretty well, also runs, if you see what I mean. Because, if you take education and health, for example, most of that's controlled by Guernsey because of the transferred services agreement. So how will you actually select who's going to do what?
An internal amongst members election. They put themselves forward a little as we do now for committee chairs, and an election takes place. Now, I think what will be different perhaps is the way that people perhaps present themselves through their manifestos at elections, that they'll say, well, this is actually what I'd like to do. But I think equally, people who stand for election need to be prepared to say, well, I might want to do X, but I've got to be prepared to do Y for the good of the island. Because I think anybody standing to become a representative, that's got to be their abiding focus, is to do the best they can for the island, for Alderney. And if there's a feeling that, if I'm not elected to X portfolio, then I can't possibly, that they've, you haven't got my expertise, well, that I don't think is perhaps the right way to be motivated to actually stand for election.
You mentioned just now that under the present system, the various chairs are elected by the states members at the time you meet following an election. You see the same situation for the Executive Council?
Yes, exactly. But we've thought that the Executive Council, there's 3 areas of importance of finance, general services, and the economic development. That those 3 are perhaps have got a greater weight, and that those who are elected to those positions should become the Executive Council.
Yeah, so it becomes an automatic process almost.
Yeah.
Okay, That's understood. What about the checks and balances by the other members if they think that the Executive Council is going the wrong way on things?
Well, you've always got 5 members who are effectively able to vote against what the Executive Council might want to do. So you have 3 versus 5. So there's always that check. And I think there's got to be a very different approach or view of what a states meeting is. I mean, currently we have the P&F committee that then feeds to the states meeting. And I think the states meeting under this new suggestion, this new proposal, will be far more a case of both passing laws. Yes, that's part of it, but there'll be far more in terms of debate about what is actually being put forward, and maybe the next states meeting, what may become going through to law or to be proposed than we currently have, that it's then seen in public. So that the states meeting itself is a different beast to what it currently is. And that, so the checks and balances there are, if each portfolio holder is effectively presenting a report of what they've been doing for that previous month, there's an opportunity there to challenge if there is an issue that has not been addressed appropriately, and for people to be accountable for what they're doing.
Because part of the problem is that being sceptical, we the public think most of the business is done at P&F, and the states meetings are just a bit of a charade to convince us that it's all hunky-dory.
But that's what I'm trying to say.
So essentially, under this, the proposed changes, we'd see far more open debate, a lot less deals done, in the committee room. I've
never seen a deal. Maybe I'm naive or have my eyes shut, but I've never seen a deal done in the P&F committee. But the meeting itself, I think the states meeting will be rather more lively, and more interactive than it currently is.
Is there any provision for misfeasance in this proposed change?
Well, in effect, the code of conduct will be in place as it currently is, and we're looking to go forward with Guernsey in terms of their proposals in potentially establishing a commissioner who is off island, and also with Jersey as well, that there's a Channel Islands commissioner to deal with issues of transgression with the code of conduct. So I think that way you've got a more objective potential for people to look at people who maybe have made poor judgments or have made wrong judgments, and that, I suppose, that is part of the new system per se.
And the civil service still remain on the basis that they carry out the policies of the members of the States of Alderney. Yes,
absolutely. I think that's, again, would be something that talking to members of the public, there is sometimes a perception that the members are doing what the civil service do. So you'll say, well, you're told, well, why can't you tell a civil servant to do this? Well, we're not line managers of civil servants. We establish policy, and the chief executive then decides how the work is then done. So I think that continues, that difference between the elected members and the civil service to enact policy.
How does the audit panel work that you refer to in the leaflet?
That effectively would be the chair of it would be not a member of the Executive Council. It would be another member and 2 other members who are not members of the Executive Council. Plus, a little like the current Code of Conduct panel, there'll be a pool of people from whom we could draw upon, ideally with appropriate experience, if it may be accountancy, lawyer, whatever, and that they would, for whatever is being audited, and it could be pre-legislative audit, post-legislative audit, or whatever aspect of enactment of a law, that they can then undertake that particular approach to make sure what has happened has been effective. Trying to some extent focus it on the same sort of terms of reference as the Guernsey current their audit committee.
Okay. Robert McDowell made it very clear that he thought there was a need for a proper financial accounting system. Would you go along with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's been something that Guernsey have been struggling with. I think 10 years ago they actually passed into legislation or intent to go to international accounting standards to IPAS.
Yeah.
And it's been like sort of pulling teeth, I think, trying to get themselves to that point. And I think the only way we can do this is to work with them. I can't see it being resource sensible for us to actually try to do this on our own. We would have to work with Guernsey to do this. And I think it is essential, because if you've got proper IPAS regulations and approach in place, it gives far better information for planning, for those who govern, and for the civil service to make things actually happen. Currently, I mean, I think that was probably my biggest surprise coming into the States was the accounting system. It is it's idiosyncratic, I would say. I mean, my previous experience as a head teacher of a school in England, if I was actually responsible straight through, theoretically, I could have been brought up in front of the Public Accounts Committee in Parliament for anything I spent. So I find the approach, that we currently have interesting.
So no more sweet shops.
I wouldn't dare comment, Tony. I wouldn't dare comment.
Now, in the leaflet, you go out of your way, and when I say you, I mean the people that prepared it, to discuss the role of the president. No political involvement. No,
I mean, we talked to the president, the current president, at length about this, and this was something that he felt quite strongly about, that he feels sometimes that there are grey areas in the current setup that occasionally put him or put the chair of P&F and other committee chairs in difficult positions that they needn't be. So we went very much down the line of it's very much the president is the first citizen of the island. So we use the word ceremonial head. I don't know whether that's quite the right term, but he's that person. She is there to represent the island in many ways, except for politically. And
so, will he be relieved of attending committee meetings?
I think he would. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But he would still preside over the states meeting.
Yes, of course, because he's the speaker.
Yeah.
Essentially. So that's accepted.
But I think one of the things that people have expressed concern to me about is, well, if you get the sort of 4-4, a vote 4-4, well, does he have a casting vote? Well, no, because that would obviously be a political act.
Yeah.
With the view that what's currently happens in some jurisdictions is you simply send the assembly out again for them to rediscuss what has happened, and if they still can't come to a 5-3 decision, then the status quo is retained.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair enough. Right. Well, many thanks for that aspect. We've got a bit more time left, so let's get on to the airport. The original estimate in 2019 based on the existing length and widening to 23 metres was £12.2 million. Allowing for a bit of inflation, which we can't ignore, that likely cost is now going to be 15 million. A lot of people have sort of said, well, we don't know how much it's going to cost to consider lengthening it, widening it, etc., etc. But, I think you could use that £15 million as a base to work out. So have you got any idea as to the likely cost of the new airport, which will not only concern the runway, but also the apron, terminal building, scanner, security fencing, control tower, fire upgrade? I mean, 50 million plus isn't probably too far out based on my 15 million for the runway. Bless you.
Sorry, apologies about that.
That's all right.
I don't want to commit to this figure of 50 million that's been thrown around. We will only know when the procurement exercise has been completed, and as a result, then we'll be in a realistic position. So I'm going to sneeze again, I think. We'll only then be in a realistic position as to what the cost will be.
It's going to be substantial, isn't it? It's a good one. I haven't come across politicians evading questions by sneezing before.
Sneezing, sorry. But I it's a convenient figure, but I don't think from the some of the information we've been given that it will be anything like that. But we need to wait until we've got that procurement exercise finished. obviously that can only take place once the vote in Guernsey has taken place to give the go ahead or not to that procurement exercise.
Why do you think they missed out the fact that an ATR needs a 30-metre wide runway, not a 23 one? David Earl picked that up for them.
Well, he's said that, and the feedback we've had was that 23 meters was sufficient, and the 30-meter is ideal from the perspective of reducing impacts of crosswinds on landing. But I think what will probably be much more influential is that the Civil Aviation Authority, that they will be the ones who will actually tell us
ultimately,
what has to be done.
Yeah, okay, that's
acceptable. And in fact, to some extent, whether you have 23 or 30, the cost of that extra 7,000 square meters, 7 meters and times 1,000 meters, is relatively small compared to because it's the cost of mobilization of getting all the kit onto the island.
I agree.
Real cost there.
But the thing is that surely they should have known when they issued the documentation, the leaflet, that the 30-meter requirement was probably going to be CAA's requirement. They apparently went to the manufacturer, and they also went to the CAA, and nobody conveniently remembered to make it 30 and not 23. But there we are. Now, one thing that's worrying everybody is the fact that the service level is going to drop. All they've mentioned so far is 2 a day to Guernsey, and no mention of Southampton.
Well, certainly you've said it's going to drop, it's going to change. And the presentations that we've been given did not illustrate that there was going to be a lifeline route to Southampton, that would be part of the service.
So you're pretty confident that if it's agreed that Alderney will offer, or whoever the carrier is at that time, will actually offer Southampton as part of the deal?
I am, yes.
Okay, that's fair comment. Okay, I don't see, Ian, how a half-full ATR will ever make any money.
Again, I think that's one for Alderney or for the carrier that's in place now. And again, I'm not party to.
No.
If you look at the annual loading costs and the way in which we get differences in demand at different times of the year, and if I were, then I could give you a good answer on that. But I don't think I can give you an informed answer, I'm afraid.
But the worry is that if I'm right, the amount of the subsidy for the Alderney route will have to increase. That means fares are going to have to increase.
It may do. I just don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. It appears that Alderney will probably have to get another ATR if they scrap the jet and make Alderney part of their ATR destination. So that's going to cost a few million, isn't it?
It certainly is. Depends on how they actually do it, because whether they buy it or lease it, I would guess. And that's one of those, again, conundrums that only Alderney can answer.
But probably won't.
Again, it's one of those things where it strikes me, States Alderney is sort of in the middle of what's around it. It's not able to grab hold.
Yeah.
You've got the States of Guernsey, the States Training Board of Guernsey, and you've got Alderney. Then we're the people to whom this is being done to, who are, yes, we are given some information, but we're not actually on the inside to see every jot and every figure that's actually being considered, and that is a great disadvantage. But I'm afraid where we are, and whether or not we should bang the drum to ask for greater access, I'm not convinced. I've again just seen it from the last 18 months. I think that there's been very good engagement with Alderney, with the States Trading Board, with States of Guernsey, and it has been a positive process going as we've gone through.
They allegedly have made a profit. Have you heard that?
Well, over the last quarter, I think Alderney did. Yes, that was announced.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's good to know that they're making a profit, bearing in mind they can fly you from Guernsey to Bristol for £9.99, and to get to Alderney, to get to Guernsey, you're up to £61.99. So let's face it, we Alderney are subsidising these stupidly cheap routes they're putting on just to get a few more bottoms on seats.
I just, again, you'd have to talk to Alderney on that one. I just don't know.
Yeah, well, you would agree that we really need a Jersey connection as well.
I would, yes. I think
Yeah.
a Jersey connection would be absolutely super, and we obviously want to be open for business to Jersey. I've had since the election of the new deputies in Jersey, I've had some very positive conversations, particularly with Kirsten Morell, the new deputy in charge of economic development there, who's very keen that we should develop greater links, and that's something that obviously we would want to do.
One thing I've skipped a question here, but I'll come back to it. The Medivac facility, which would be available if you have a longer runway, currently costs Jersey £1 million a year. I think, you know, they sort of pay an upfront fee, as it were. Guernsey £500,000. I mean, presumably it's going to cost us, isn't it, if we actually have that as an arrangement?
It costs on a use, you know, sort of user basis. So
Yeah.
the more use, the more it would actually cost. But there's a greater one of the unknowns there are the different approaches perhaps that Guernsey will have in terms of health provision and the PH, what they actually will accept, how they will accept the an urgent case. So it's not again a figure that I think you can give with any sort of solidity about it in terms of saying, oh, it will cost so many hundreds of thousands. I just don't think you can do that.
Okay. Do you think there's a likely backlash from Guernsey taxpayers on Guernsey if they see all this money being spent on Alderney Airport?
I think there's a lot of work we all have to do. We talk about the bailiwick. It's the bailiwick infrastructure. Alderney's airport is part of the bailiwick.
Yes, I know that, you know that, but
it is convincing all residents that it is a bailiwick effect. That if Alderney is doing well in terms of its economic development, and underpinning that would be the extension of that runway, then of course that helps all residents.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that's the battle to be won, if you like, is the hearts and minds to say it is a bailiwick structure, and it's for the bailiwick to develop. Because
this is something Paul Arditi always used to say. It's Airfield 1 and Airfield 2, and they're, you know, almost a package, but there we are. Okay, we've only got a few minutes left because Mr. Zoom has sent me through a little warning. So can we have a look at other matters? What about the swimming pool? What's happening about that?
Well, certainly the Sports Foundation wrote a very informative report last summer. I think it's sort of September, with regard to what could be done with the school in terms of developing indoor sports facilities. That's then further discussion now with Guernsey Education, and that's where we've got to. So I'm afraid that's in limbo.
Okay, so are we agreed then that the pool that was actually built in the grounds of the school, obviously never had the pool itself put in, that's off the agenda? Can that be used for something else?
As I was going to say,
as a sports hall.
As to its function, as to what you could use it for, I think there will be a wide range of possible uses. I think we need to think very carefully what a building of that size and volume could be used for. A sports hall, probably not, simply because of lack of height. But I think there are certainly other aspects of sports facility that could be used there. But I think what seems to have happened there is that we've just lost momentum. We're going perhaps trying to be too ambitious to do too many things at the same time, and we've lost that focus that perhaps with the school at the moment. With the new head coming or being appointed, I think perhaps September will be the time to come back to this.
Okay. Pat Saline sewerage scheme.
Piece of legislation had to be changed first, but the actual project, as they put it, to sort of stage 2, that's on the blocks, ready to go.
Marina.
The Bray Harbour sort of expressions of interest for the Bray Harbour development area, those come in the autumn, which could include a marina. And again, you have to wait for those to come in to then see where we develop from there.
Is Mr. Gordon Owen's proposal off now?
I think he's certainly been part of the. I think that he's been invited with regard to an expression of interest. So
Okay.
I'm not, again, as stakes, we're not part of that's part of it. That's the chief executive receives those expressions of interest.
Okay.
So he can apply it as anybody else can, of course.
Port Torgy?
It's a big Victorian fort, which currently
had a load of Dutch people after it.
Which has again, there seems to have been a reignition, if you like, of interest from that Dutch company. I know the chief executive has been in contact with them, and they've been in contact with her, and I really have nothing further to say on it other than there's a financial appreciation going on with what they proposed.
Okay.
But again, I think it strikes me as a very, it's an ambitious project, and what we would have to come back to is what are we able to manage without overextending ourselves, so that we don't get to the situation once again trying to be too ambitious, doing too many things and not achieving anything.
Help for first-time buyers. How about this? You charge a nominal rate of congee, say 0.5%, but you have a lien on the properties whereby if they sell within a set period of time, you can collect the 4.5%.
Sounds good proposal. I mean, the housing group were looking at certainly the way in which to reduce any form of tax that first-time buyers, residents, not residents of the island, not people coming in to just buy a property. So as to make those taxes, if you like, as minimal as possible, or like a tax holiday, certainly for a decent period of time, a couple of years or so. They're coming forward with those suggestions. Mr. Boyd Kelly has taken over as chair of the housing group from Rhys Jenkins after Rhys's states.
But so the thing is, Ian, you can't control the housing market in terms of prices. You can only help in terms of giving people breaks on taxation. Which
is why I think that sort of your suggestion, which again I think has legs. Likewise, as I say, taking away those initial duties for first-time buyers, that will help, because obviously that's a set amount of money that they don't have to find.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, it's bad enough trying to find 10%, but 10% plus
another chunk.
Yeah. Ferry subsidy. Who's getting the money? Bearing in mind there appear to be two operators.
It goes to the Salty Blonde Limited. They were the people who sought it, and they were the people who awarded it.
They had the contract.
They had the contract, and that's it. Yeah.
What they do. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, we're getting a bit short on time. Energy subsidy. Anything?
Well, currently AEL are using some reserves to subsidise electrical energy.
Yeah.
We thought we'd do that in the summer because obviously there's less pressure on kerosene oil needed for heating. We're in conversation with AEL as to how they can, again, using the different approaches, help with regard to kerosene sales in the winter, or the costs. Where we have some positive news there is that because we're quite a relatively incredibly small user, we don't have that sort of weekly need for kerosene coming into the island, and so the spot prices we seem to have missed the real peak. Yeah, and we might actually be in quite a good position, but it's not something that we're absolutely certain on yet. But we've got, as I say, ongoing sort of discussions with AEL to try to alleviate any potential problems that will be on the horizon. But we know they may be there. I'm sorry we've run out of time. Can I thank you very, very much for sparing me your time this afternoon? Really enjoyed talking to you as ever. And, I'm sure that people will find this very interesting, particularly as far as the governance side is concerned. Many thanks, Ian. Thank you, Tony.